We are born into this world not as solitary beings, but as creatures bound to one another, woven into the fabric of humanity. Yet, we often find ourselves retreating, believing that strength lies in solitude. But I tell you, true strength does not arise from the silence of isolation, but from the chorus of voices that lift us up, challenge our limits, and guide us through the storms. To live a life of purpose, we must recognize the undeniable truth. We are not meant to walk this path alone. And it is in building a network of support, not of mere acquaintances, but of true, authentic connections, that we find the courage to rise, the wisdom to grow, and the peace that comes from knowing we are never truly alone. The journey is hard, but it is made lighter when we walk it together. The power of connection, breaking free from isolation. We often imagine strength as a lone figure standing tall against the winds of adversity, self-sufficient and unshaken by the world around them. But true strength is not found in the silence of solitary struggle. It is found in the silent support of others, in the bond that forms when one heart reaches out to another. Consider this: if a single tree stands alone, its roots may be shallow and its trunk may bend with the slightest breeze, but when a forest stands together, each tree's roots intertwine, supporting the others, creating a force that no storm can break. Isolation may seem like peace, but it is a fragile peace, like a single candle flickering in the wind. To build a strong life, we must abandon the notion that we are islands, and instead recognize the power in connection. It is not enough to merely exist beside others. We must connect with them, share in their struggles, celebrate their triumphs, and offer them our hand when the weight of life becomes too heavy. This bond creates a force greater than any one individual can possess. We are all in this journey together, and to isolate ourselves is to cut ourselves off from the wellspring of human potential. The wisdom of one may not always be our own, but when we listen, when we offer our strength to others, it becomes our shared wisdom, our shared struggle, our shared victory. So, what if we allowed ourselves to lean on others, to trust in their support, and to offer them our own? In doing so, we break free from the chains of isolation, and in the process, we find something far greater than strength. We find the power of connection. We find the essence of what it means to be human, and in that, we realize that the greatest triumphs are not the ones we face alone, but those we face together. The silent struggles we hide within. Behind every smile there exists a silent battle. Behind every word there are unspoken fears and doubts, struggles that we dare not share, even with the closest of companions. We convince ourselves that our burdens are ours to carry alone, that showing weakness is a flaw, a failing. But in truth, this silence is the breeding ground of suffering. For when we hide our struggles, we do not protect ourselves. We isolate our pain, giving it power over us, magnifying its weight. We must come to understand that suffering is not a solitary experience. It is a universal one. There is not a single person who walks this earth without knowing heartache, doubt, or fear. To deny this is to live in denial of the very essence of what it means to be human, and in doing so we build walls around our hearts that only keep out the very support we need. The Stoic wisdom teaches us that we cannot avoid pain, but we can choose how to respond to it. We can choose to carry it in isolation, or we can choose to share it, to allow others to help bear its weight. It is not a sign of weakness to admit we struggle. It is a sign of wisdom. It is a recognition that our strength lies not in hiding our burdens, but in confronting them together. When we open ourselves to others, we allow our struggles to be seen, not as flaws, but as part of our shared human experience. And in that sharing, we find relief, not just in the moment, but in the connection that forms. We realize we are not alone in our pain, and that in itself is a healing balm. The walls we build to protect ourselves from pain are often the same walls that keep us from the very support we need to heal. And so we must learn to tear down these walls, not to expose ourselves to further suffering, but to expose ourselves to the love, wisdom, and strength of others. Only then can we truly begin to heal. Only then can we free ourselves from the silent struggles we've hidden within. Why we isolate ourselves. Understanding the root cause. Isolation is not a choice made by the mind alone. It is a choice born from fear, a fear deeply embedded in the human condition. We isolate ourselves because we fear judgment, we fear rejection, and perhaps most of all we fear vulnerability. The idea of opening ourselves to others, of exposing our weaknesses and flaws, feels like surrender. It feels like handing over control to forces beyond us, forces we cannot predict, nor can we always trust. But we must ask ourselves, what is the cost of this isolation? When we retreat into ourselves, believing that we can handle the weight of the world alone, we are not choosing freedom. We are choosing imprisonment. The walls we build around ourselves may provide temporary safety, but they also keep us from the very experiences that can bring us growth and healing. In truth, our instinct to isolate often arises from a deep sense of unworthiness. We think we are not worthy of connection, that our burdens are too heavy, our flaws too great for others to bear. But the reality is this: none of us are perfect. None of us have a life without struggle. The very act of isolating ourselves is a rejection of our shared humanity, and in that rejection we deny ourselves the opportunity to grow and to be lifted by others. It is vital that we examine the root of our isolation. Is it fear of rejection, fear of vulnerability, or is it simply that we do not trust others with the full weight of our being? Only by confronting these fears, by facing the truth of why we isolate ourselves, can we begin to dismantle the walls that separate us from others. Once we understand the root cause of our isolation, we can begin to address it. It is not enough to simply will ourselves to open up. We must first acknowledge the fears that keep us bound, and then gently but firmly push against them. We must take the first step, no matter how small, toward connecting with those around us. We must remind ourselves that the true power of connection lies not in perfection, but in shared humanity. The path to healing begins not with isolation, but with recognition. We are all in this together. And once we accept that, the journey becomes far less daunting. It becomes a path walked in the company of others, where every step is made easier by the support of those who walk beside us. The strength in vulnerability, embracing our imperfections. We often associate vulnerability with weakness, believing that to expose our flaws and imperfections is to expose ourselves to harm. Yet true strength lies not in hiding our weaknesses, but in embracing them. Vulnerability is not a sign of fragility. It is the courageous act of opening ourselves to the world, acknowledging that we are not invincible, and that it is in our shared struggles that we find our greatest resilience. Consider this. When we choose to hide our vulnerabilities, we create an illusion of invulnerability. But the truth is, we are all imperfect beings carrying our own scars, fears and doubts. To pretend otherwise is not strength, it is denial. The real power comes from accepting our imperfections, from allowing ourselves to be seen as we truly are, not in spite of our flaws, but because of them. In embracing vulnerability, we give others permission to do the same. We break down the walls of isolation not only for ourselves, but for those around us. We create spaces where authenticity can flourish, where people can connect not over their perfected images, but over their shared humanity. It is in these spaces that true connection is born, where we can lean on each other not as perfect beings, but as fellow travelers, walking a difficult path with courage and grace. This is the paradox of vulnerability. In exposing our deepest fears, we find our greatest strength. When we allow others to see our flaws, we discover the beauty of true connection. And in that connection, we find not judgment, but understanding, not rejection, but acceptance. The journey to strength does not lie in building walls to hide our imperfections. It lies in opening ourselves up, letting the light of vulnerability shine through, and trusting that we will be met not with disdain, but with compassion. For it is only in embracing our true selves, imperfect, vulnerable and human, that we can find the courage to live fully, to connect deeply, and to be truly free. The illusion of independence, the need for community. We are often taught that independence is the ultimate virtue. We are encouraged to stand on our own, to rely on no one but ourselves, to be the masters of our own destiny. There is a nobility in self-sufficiency, certainly, but there is a danger in believing that we must go through life entirely alone, without leaning on others or opening ourselves to the strength of community. The illusion of independence tells us that we must carry the weight of the world on our own shoulders, that to seek help is a sign of weakness. But this belief is not only flawed, it is harmful. The truth is that no one, no matter how strong, can truly thrive in isolation. Human beings are not solitary creatures. We are wired for connection, for support, for sharing our burdens and our joys. To deny this is to deny our very nature. When we attempt to go through life alone, we are not being strong. We are being unnecessarily rigid. Life is not meant to be a series of solitary battles. It is a collective journey where we rise and fall together. The strength of the individual is not measured by how much they can carry alone, but by how much they can contribute to and receive from the community around them. In the Stoic tradition, we are reminded that we are part of something greater than ourselves. We are part of a vast, interconnected whole. Our actions ripple through the lives of others, just as their actions ripple through ours. This is not a sign of dependence, it is a sign of interdependence, a natural and powerful force that binds us together. We are stronger not in our solitary independence, but in the shared strength of the collective. The need for community is not a weakness, it is a reflection of our humanity. To seek connection is not to admit defeat, it is to embrace the reality that we are all in this together. We are all walking the same path, facing the same struggles, and sharing the same triumphs. And in that shared experience, we find not only solace, but strength. True independence is not found in isolation. It is found in the ability to thrive in community, to contribute to the well-being of others, and to allow others to contribute to ours. The illusion of independence must be shattered, for it is only through connection, through community, that we find the true strength to endure, to grow, and to live fully. The loneliness epidemic, a silent crisis we all face. Loneliness is often regarded as a personal ailment, a quiet ache that we must resolve within ourselves. But what if we acknowledged it for what it truly is, a collective crisis? The pandemic of loneliness is not an isolated experience. It is a disease that runs through the veins of modern society, infecting us all in different ways. And yet, despite its prevalence, we continue to wear our isolation like a badge of honor, hiding behind screens, presenting curated versions of ourselves, and convincing ourselves that we are okay. But the truth is, we are not okay, at least not entirely. No one is immune to the pangs of loneliness, even in a crowded room, even in the midst of social media connections. The absence of true, meaningful human connection has become one of the greatest challenges of our time, and while we may be surrounded by people, it is the absence of connection. It is the silence between us, the walls we build, and the distance we maintain. It is the refusal to open ourselves to others, to allow ourselves to be seen and understood, and to return that understanding in kind. We mistake proximity for connection, and in doing so, we become more isolated than we realize. This epidemic of loneliness is not something we can simply ignore. It is a call to action. We must recognize that isolation, whether physical or emotional, is a silent killer of the human spirit. It erodes our sense of purpose, diminishes our joy, and leaves us adrift in a sea of disconnection. The remedy, however, is simple: connection. We must be brave enough to step outside our walls, to engage with the world around us, and to build relationships that are rooted in authenticity, trust, and mutual support. It is in these relationships, not in our solitude, that we find true meaning and fulfillment. Loneliness is not a curse. It is an invitation. It is an invitation to reach out, to bridge the gap between ourselves and others, and to heal the silent wounds we all carry. The moment we acknowledge our shared humanity, the moment we break free from the chains of isolation, is the moment we begin to heal, not just as individuals, but as a collective. The cure to loneliness is not found in further isolation, but in the courage to connect, to open ourselves to others, and to walk this journey together. Building bridges, not walls. Opening ourselves to others. Throughout our lives, we are faced with a choice: to build bridges or to build walls. When we face adversity, when we feel vulnerable, it is easy to retreat inward, to wall ourselves off from the world. The idea of a wall seems safe, a sturdy barrier that keeps the outside world at bay. But while walls may provide temporary protection, they also imprison us. They keep us from the warmth of connection, the nourishment of support, and the beauty of shared experiences. We must understand that the act of building walls is not a sign of strength. It is a response to fear, the fear of rejection, of being misunderstood, or of being hurt. But in building these walls, we are not protecting ourselves from pain. We are merely isolating ourselves from love, from growth, and from the very things that allow us to heal and thrive. To build bridges, however, is to open ourselves to possibility. It is the courageous act of extending our hands to others, of reaching out with vulnerability and trust. It is in the act of building bridges that we find connection, and in connection we find strength. We find that we are not alone in our struggles. that our burdens are lighter when shared, and that the beauty of life is found not in isolation, but in togetherness. When we choose to build bridges, we invite others into our lives, and we enter theirs. We create spaces of mutual support, of understanding, and of compassion. It is in these spaces that we find the true richness of human experience. We share in one another's triumphs, offer solace in times of sorrow, and grow together in ways that would be impossible in solitude. The act of building a bridge is an act of love. A love that transcends fear, that opens the heart to new possibilities, and that binds us to one another in a way that nothing else can. A wall may protect us from external threats, but it also keeps us from the beauty that lies beyond. A bridge, on the other hand, connects us to the fullness of life, to the strength of community, and to the transformative power of human connection. Let us choose to build bridges, not walls. Let us open ourselves to others, to the love and support they offer, and to the growth that comes from sharing our lives with those around us. For in the end, it is not the walls we build that define us, but the bridges we extend. And it is through those bridges that we find our truest strength. The transformative impact of shared support. There is a quiet power in shared support, a force that can transform the course of our lives. When we allow others to support us, we are not weak, we are wise. We are acknowledging the truth that we do not live in a vacuum and that the struggles we face are not ours alone. The weight we carry becomes lighter when we allow others to share the load. In turn, when we offer our support to others, we extend a lifeline, a reminder that no one has to face the world. Support is not just about offering help during times of crisis. It is about creating a foundation of trust and understanding that allows us to grow. The simple act of being there for someone, listening, understanding, offering a kind word, can ignite change. It can offer hope in the darkest moments, strength when we feel our resolve fading, and the courage to keep moving forward. The ripple effect of shared support is profound. One act of kindness, one moment of true understanding, can awaken something within us that we didn't know we had. Resilience. Shared support fosters growth because it teaches us the value of vulnerability. When we open ourselves to others, we allow them to see not just our strengths, but our weaknesses, and it is in that honesty that connection is made. The more we share, the more we realize that we are not defined by our struggles, but by our capacity to rise, to learn, and to move forward with others by our side. There is an undeniable truth. We cannot go through life alone. No matter how much we try to convince ourselves that we are self-sufficient, the simple fact is this: we need one another, not just in moments of crisis, but in the everyday moments when we need encouragement, a reminder that we are enough and that we matter. This is the power of shared support. It provides us with the emotional nourishment that keeps us going, the strength to face each new day, and the understanding that we are part of something greater than ourselves. In building a network of support, we create a circle of trust, where each person gives and receives in equal measure. It is in this circle that we find our truest selves, not as isolated individuals, but as interconnected beings whose strength lies not in our ability to stand alone, but in our ability to stand together. Let us not underestimate the transformative power of shared support. It has the ability to heal wounds, restore hope, and ignite the strength within us that we never knew we had. In offering our support to others, we transform their world, and in receiving it, we transform our own. It is through this reciprocal relationship that we find the true meaning of connection, and in that connection we find the courage to become the best versions of ourselves. The courage to reach out, the first step toward connection. One of the greatest challenges we face is the courage to reach out. The act of extending ourselves to another person, of saying, "I need help," or "I want to be part of your life," can feel like a monumental task. It feels vulnerable, uncertain, and even risky. But in truth, it is one of the most courageous things we can do. For in reaching out, we allow ourselves to be seen. We put ourselves in a position to be heard, to be understood, and, ultimately, to be supported. The fear that holds us back is often rooted in a deep uncertainty. What if we are rejected? What if we make ourselves vulnerable only to be ignored, judged, or dismissed? These fears are natural, but they are also the very thing that keeps us stuck. The fear of rejection often prevents us from experiencing the beauty of connection. It convinces us that it is safer to remain in isolation, to hide behind our walls, rather than risk the possibility of hurt. But in doing so, we miss out on the profound, transformative experience of truly connecting with another human being. The courage to reach out is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to act despite it. It is the recognition that connection is worth the vulnerability, that the potential rewards of reaching out far outweigh the temporary discomfort of putting ourselves out there. We must remind ourselves that it is not in our perfection that we are loved, but in our authenticity, our willingness to be real, to be human. It is our imperfections that create connection, not our facades. When we take the first step toward connection, we open the door to a world of possibilities. We give others the opportunity to share their strength with us, to offer their wisdom, and to be part of our journey. We allow ourselves to grow not just through our own experiences, but through the experiences of others. And in doing so, we create a web of support that can carry us through even the darkest of times. Reaching out is a choice. It is a decision to step beyond the comfort of isolation and into the warmth of human connection. It is an act of courage, an act that invites the possibility of both joy and pain, but always growth. For in reaching out, we not only build bridges between ourselves and others, but we also build the bridges that lead us toward a more fulfilled, meaningful life. So, the next time you feel the pull of isolation, the fear of rejection, or the hesitation to be vulnerable, remember, connection is worth the risk. The first step is the hardest, but it is also the most important. Take that step, reach out, and in doing so, you open the door to a life of shared strength, wisdom, and love.